In this video, we will show you how to replace your right front axle. On this Honda Civic, this will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing that you are going to want to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. With the wheel up off the ground, let's continue on to removing all 5 of our 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now with the wheel out of the way, we have a clear view of our axle nut, right along here in the center. We'll use a 32mm socket to remove this. Once you have that removed, we'll continue on to driving the axle out of the bearing. Use a hammer and punch directly in the center here. With it broken free, you can continue on. The next thing that we'll do is make sure we have some slack from our brake hose and our ABS wire. To do that, start with the mounting point for the brake hose leading to the strut. We'll use a 12mm to remove the mounting bolt. Now we can move along to the ABS wire along the back side of the strut. You can either pull it up and out of here, or just squeeze on these 2 little ears and remove the plastic bracket from the strut. Now let's have a look underneath the control arm. In this area, you're going to find that you have 2 17mm mounting nuts and 1 17mm mounting bolt. Let's start by removing the 17mm mounting bolt first. Continue on to each of those 2 mounting nuts. With that mounting hardware removed, we can start separating the ball joint from the lower control arm. To do that, we will want to try to pry down on the control arm to separate this area. While I'm pulling down, I'll also get in between this area with a pry bar of some sort so I can gently separate it, and then we'll pull this aside. Now we'll carefully grab onto the axle and the caliper, and we'll start pulling this away and pull the axle shaft out of the backside of the wheel bearing. Now the next thing that we will do is try to remove the axle from the inboard part of the axle attached to the carrier bearing. Now to remove this part of the axle, you're just going to pry using a long pry bar. And now we can remove this from the vehicle. With the axle out of there, let's clean and inspect this little stub shaft. Double check to make sure it does still have the locking ring. This one does. All right, let's get ready for the installation of that front axle. We'll take this and put it in position, making sure that we align the inboard side of the axle with that stub shaft making its way out of the carrier bearing. At this point, you're going to want to try to pull the knuckle rearward so you can line this up as straight as possible. Use a rubber mallet on the end here and drive it into place. At this point, we'll reach inside and try to pull the axle away from that stub shaft closest to that carrier bearing. If it falls out, it was not applied properly. That feels good. Now we can take the end of the axle and put it in along the back side of the wheel bearing. Now we are not going to press this all the way in, we just want to make sure that the splines are aligned properly. We can continue on with pulling down on the control arm and aligning the lower ball joint studs with the mounting holes in the control arm itself. While doing this, be extremely careful for any pinch points so you do not get hurt. Let's continue on with the mounting hardware for that ball joint. We'll start with that mounting bolt. Continue on to each of your mounting nuts. Once you have each of these started in position, snug them up and torque them to 43 foot-pounds. Now we can move along to reattaching our brake flex hose. We'll make sure that this is secured with our 12mm headed bolt. Now it's time for the ABS wire. Press it in, listen for a click, double check to make sure each of these is secure. You do not want them loose. Now let's continue on with our axle nut. We'll take this and make sure we start it on by hand and snug it up. You never want to use an air tool on this so you do not over tighten it and potentially damage your bearing. Once you have the nut bottomed out, torque it to 134 foot-pounds. The next thing you'll want to do is use a hammer and punch. On the axle itself, you'll find that you have a small notch cut out of it. You want to use the punch and drive the nut down into that slot. There we are. Once you have that peened in, you're sure that that nut will not loosen up while you're driving down the road. Now, once you've confirmed that everything's nice and tight, we can continue on with the wheel. Start on all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts. We'll bottom these out, get the wheel safely back on the ground, and then torque each of these to 80 foot-pounds. Now with the wheel safely on the ground, let's torque these in a crisscross manner. Okay friends, we showed you how to install your right front axle. At this point, go ahead and safely take your car down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.